This is North Carolina's current congressional map. For a state that has had such a bad history with gerrymandering, North Carolina's current congressional map is actually, relatively speaking, pretty fair. It consists of roughly 1, 2, 3, 4, as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 Democratic leaning districts and 7 Republican leaning districts, which is fitting for the state's nearly even partisan lead. Yes, this district does say R plus 3, but it was won by Joe Biden. And given how competitive the state of North Carolina is on the federal and state level, it is fitting that it should have 7 state delegation, congressional delegation. So North Carolina's current congressional map is, relatively speaking, pretty fair, but it only became a map due to the fact that state courts overruled North Carolina's 2 previous congressional maps, which were both Republican gerrymanders. However, this new map is very fair. So we're going to do a similar thing. In the last video I made, we were gerrymandering several states, and in this video we're going to be taking states which have gerrymandered maps, and we're going to be changing them into fair maps. I'm going to pick 10 states which I personally think are gerrymandered. One state which I think is gerrymandered is the state of Arkansas. Arkansas's current congressional districts look like this. While it may not look that weird, considering the fact that Arkansas has 4 solidly Republican districts, so Arkansas, generally speaking, votes 65-35 for the Republican Party. However, with 4 solidly Republican districts, Arkansas's delegation becomes 100% Republican, when in reality it should be roughly 75%. One of these districts should be Democrat-leaning in Arkansas. So the way I did to draw that was I merged the Black Belt regions of Arkansas with the inner city with parts of Little Rock to basically make this into a blue district. It's a competitive blue district that's roughly D+3 on the presidential level in 2020, but at the same time, this is, I think in my opinion at least, a fair congressional map for Arkansas. It also gives black voters in Arkansas some representation, because this current map doesn't give black Arkansans any sort of representation whatsoever, despite the fact that African Americans make up roughly about 20%, I believe, of Arkansas's population. So in my opinion at least, Arkansas's current map is a racial gerrymander, to say the least. I think it does strip black voters of their voting rights. I mean, not directly. I think it dilutes black voting power, especially in Little Rock and the Black Belt regions of Arkansas. So needless to say, I merged them together in this new congressional map to give Democrats 1 congressional district in Arkansas. Now, for the analysis, this new map is 100% proportional. It does a decent job when it comes to avoiding splitting congressional districts. It gives some minority representation. It is competitive, and it's sort of compact. So to say the least, I think this is a good congressional map for Arkansas. Now, another state which I think is gerrymandered is the state of Louisiana. Louisiana's congressional map was actually struck down, but then the Supreme Court took it up, and now the Supreme Court has overruled itself and has now reverted back to the original state decision for when it comes to Louisiana's map. This map looks very gerrymandered. I mean, look at how this district around New Orleans is. This district with Baton Rouge, like, this is obviously a gerrymandered map. There's no question about it. And black Louisianans make up roughly 30% of the state's electorate. And considering the fact that there are 8 districts, they should at least hold, or no, not 8. There are, I think there are, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There are 6 districts. They should hold about 2 out of 6 districts, which is 33%. So, in my view at least, there should be at least 2 majority black districts in Louisiana. So, with this new congressional map I made, I made that happen by putting 1 solidly Dem district in New Orleans and 1 competitive Dem district outside. If you look at the statistics right here, that's 2 Biden districts, 1 which Biden narrowly won, and I sort of made 2 majority minority districts in Louisiana. As for the analysis, this is shown as 96% when it comes to minority representation, 100% when it comes to proportionality, and the rest of them are in the 20s. It's not that good when it comes to county splitting and compactness, but nonetheless, this is definitely a net positive over the current Louisiana map, and I think that Louisiana is ultimately going to adopt a map that looks sort of like this. Now, another state which I think is gerrymandered is, I think, the state of Mississippi. Mississippi, let's see here. That's its map. There we go. So Mississippi has roughly a African American population of about 35%, the largest in the country, and African Americans hold currently 25% of the congressional districts. And when it comes to partisan gerrymandering, it's even worse, considering the fact that Democrats usually get roughly about 40% of the vote and to 42%, while Republicans get like about 58%. Rounding up, it's 60-40, but Democrats only have 25% of the state's congressional districts. So that's Alabama. This is Mississippi. So Mississippi's map, right now, this new map I created has two competitive Dem districts and two solidly Republican districts. By doing so, I basically created one district with Jackson and a few surrounding rural areas, as well as another district with Mississippi's Black Belt areas, which are mostly, in fact, rural, however, heavily Democratic. If you look at the statistics, Democrats narrowly win in two districts, both of which are majority minority and have a lot of black representation. As for the analysis, as you can see, this is rated as 100% towards minority representation, 61% for competitiveness, and 64% for compactness. I think this is overall a good congressional map. I think it's much better than Mississippi's current map, which basically merges the inner city of Jackson along with all the Black Belt regions. So, to say the least, I think this is a good map for the state of Mississippi. Mississippi's current congressional map, unlike Louisiana's, is probably not going to get overturned. And Arkansas, I think, currently faces a lawsuit, so it may get overruled, but I honestly think that Mississippi and Arkansas's maps are going to stay the same. However, Alabama's congressional map did get overruled by the United States Supreme Court. In that Supreme Court case, I think we heard about a month ago, I believe. So, needless to say, Alabama's current map is not the best. I mean, it has 7 congressional districts, and one of them is majority black. And I'm pretty sure that African Americans make up 25% of Alabama's overall population. But this new map only gives African Americans 11% of the state representation. If they had controlled 2 districts, on the other hand, it would become much more proportional, both racially and overall with how Alabama votes. So this new map I made basically contains one solidly Dem district, which is Birmingham, and a few outer areas, as well as the entire Black Belt, plus parts of Mobile. This is, like I said, Alabama's most likely going to adopt. Alabama overruled the Supreme Court overruled Alabama's current congressional map. So I believe that this map sort of similar to this may be adopted, a map which takes Mobile and the Black Belt areas and merges them together, as well as another map with Birmingham and surrounding areas. Overall, this gives decent minority representation in 3 out of 7 districts, particularly there are no majority minority districts, but there are districts which have a significant minority population, especially the 1st district and the 3rd district, as well as to a lesser extent the 1st and the 4th district, as well as the 3rd. The 3rd district I actually made sort of competitive, the district with Huntsville and surrounding areas. Instead of it becoming a solidly Republican district, it's only now like R+8 or so. So I made essentially 2 competitive districts, 1 Dem district, and 4 Republican districts. But needless to say, most likely it's going to be a 7-2 Dem Republican majority. And as you can see, this map is proportional. It has decent minority representation. And overall, I think this is a much better map than Alabama's current congressional map. And I think Alabama should adopt this map. However, it's unknown how exactly they'll do so. There is a plan where Republicans will attempt to create 2 competitive districts, and then the rest are all solid R. I think a map like that may also be struck down as unconstitutional, but I think this is most likely the map which they're going to create. And now the state of Georgia. Georgia is, I'm honestly baffled by Georgia's current congressional map. I mean, They only have Democrats only have 4 congressional districts, while Republicans control about let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 districts. This one is Dem leaning, so that's a 9-5 majority. Despite the fact that Joe Biden actually won Georgia in 2020. Republicans control roughly 64% of Georgia's congressional districts. Not a good idea, to say the least. They should have made a much more fair map, but needless to say, Republicans fully control Georgia's redistricting, so it's going to be a gerrymander. It was a gerrymander. I'm not surprised, but needless to say, it is in litigation, so there is a lawsuit going on. However, if you look over here, there was a, I'm pretty sure, so these are the demographics, I think, for each district. There were only, black Georgians, I think, consist of 30% of the population, and there are about, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. There are 4 majority black districts out of Georgia's 16 districts, which is 25%, which is actually, to be honest, not that bad, considering the fact that that's actually pretty close. So when it comes to overall how racial maps are drawn, this map isn't actually that bad. But when it comes to partisan gerrymandering, yes, this map is actually one of the worst maps in the entire country. This would be a more fair map, in my opinion, at least for Georgia to adopt. It consists of one blue district with Savannah, another blue district with the Black Belt and Columbus, and roughly, I believe, in Atlanta, there will be four solidly blue districts in Atlanta and 1 in Cobb County. So, needless to say, that's 7 districts for the Democrats. So so I'm giving Democrats here 7 congressional districts, I believe. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So 7 blue districts and 8 red districts, as well as about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, as well as 5 majority-minority districts. So when it comes to analysis, it's 90% when it comes to minority representation, 86% when it comes to proportionality. So needless to say, I think this is a good Georgia map to adopt. Georgia's current congressional map, I think it's unlikely to get overruled, considering the fact that they did create about 4 majority black districts, which honestly is sort of proportional to how Georgia overall is when it comes to demographics. So I doubt that Georgia's current map is going to get overruled, even though there is a lawsuit surrounding it. And now we have the state of South Carolina. This is another state which had its congressional map overruled because of how they divided up Charleston. They moved many of the residents up over here and merged it with the Black Belt, as well as parts of Columbia. So this is South Carolina's current map, despite the fact that so I think roughly about 25% or so of South Carolinians are black. So 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. But despite that, only 14% of South Carolina's districts are majority black. But needless to say, South Carolina's map, which I created, I made it so that there would be... So, also, South Carolina as a state, it roughly is a state that's won by Democrats by about 14 points, so it's mostly about, like, 56-42 or 55-45, somewhere around there when it comes to overall. But needless to say, I wasn't able to create any majority-minority districts in this, but I did create a couple of districts which would become competitive, needless to say. Like, for starters, this district over here, the 5th district, the 2nd and the 3rd, I made competitive blue districts. Yes, it is possible for Republicans to gain majorities in all 7 congressional districts, but I do think this is still more proportional than South Carolina's current map. It only has a 48 when it comes to proportionality, so it's not as good when it comes to proportionality as the last few southern maps. But needless to say, I think if there's this feature which actually allows you to compare it to another map. So if I compare it to South Carolina's current map, which has a 0 when it comes to proportionality, this is, in my opinion at least, a whole lot better than South Carolina's current congressional map. Now, let's exit the South and go to the Midwest, to the state of Ohio. Ohio, it's been a while, at least, since Ohio's actually had a fair congressional map. Like, Ohio's original map, which they designed, was actually overruled So this was I think this was their original proposal, which would have two Dem districts, and the rest are all going to be controlled by Republicans. Well, most of them are anyway, but this was their plan, at least for Ohio. This was their planned map, but actually it got overruled, so instead they ended up creating a map which was barely more fair, where they just created one district in Cleveland, one in Columbus, and then one in Cincinnati, which was competitive, not even like solid blue, and then like a few other districts. And yeah, Ohio's not necessarily had a good reputation when it comes to gerrymandering. So this is Ohio's current map. So this is the map I created. So this is the partisan lean of every district in this map. So what I did was I put Cincinnati in I made the Cincinnati district much more blue. I made it like solid blue. Let me show you. So the first district, so let's see here. The Cincinnati district is right here. It's the first district. The first district is D plus 10, I believe. I don't know why it's still showing as competitive. Like, that's pretty much solid blue at the end of the day. And then, created a few. So basically, this map I created, it has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It has 5 blue districts, but also creates a bunch of other competitive districts. And needless to say, when it comes to overall how this map is, it's a 65 when it comes to proportionality. And if you compare it to Ohio's current map, which we'll see right now, it's overall much better, except for when it comes to minority representation. It's better in every other metric. So needless to say, I like this congressional map, which I created for Ohio. And then, yeah. So the next map is Wisconsin. Wisconsin is really a weird state when it comes to redistricting. I mean, it seems as if it's sort of geographically impossible to draw a fair map for Wisconsin, which I actually do sort of buy because of how rural these areas are and the fact that there are only 2 big cities, Madison and Milwaukee. But needless to say, I think they could make this map a little bit more fair. So there are 8 districts in Wisconsin. Only 25% of them are controlled by Democrats, which is honestly surprising considering that Wisconsin was won by Joe Biden. So this map is even more partisanly wonkers than Georgia's is. It also could also be potentially seen as a racial gerrymander, given how there's only like how compact the districts are, with black voters being basically solidified into 2 districts, Milwaukee and Madison. So let's look at Wisconsin's map right now. It basically has so the map I created, I made 1 blue district right there in southern Wisconsin. So that district, it would be this district right here. I basically turned that into a blue district. As for that, I also made 1 district in Milwaukee and 1 in Madison. And then for 1 more district, I made sort of competitive the district that's currently, I think, held by, I think it's not Ron Kind. He retired and got replaced by a Republican. I think his name is Derek Van Orden. This district is R plus 9. I think it was won by Trump by about 2 points, I say. This new district I made, it was won by, this new district I made down there was won by Trump by, like, about the same amount, 2 to 3 points. So needless to say, I just made 1 extra blue district, so this new map has 2 competitive districts and 4 solidly Republican districts. It's not that proportional, but comparing it to Wisconsin's current map, yeah, it's definitely a net positive compared to Wisconsin's current congressional map. So next we have the state of New Mexico. This one is a Democrat gerrymander. New Mexico's map, well, yes, this does actually look like a good map given how competitive it is. You would be fooled by that because keep in mind, 538 compares maps based off of the overall national average, not based off of how many points they were won by. So the old map had 1 Republican district, but this new map is all 3 districts are controlled by Dems. This is not good, to say the least. New Mexico should have at least 1 Democrat Republican district. This also could be actually seen as a reverse racial gerrymander against white voters in New Mexico who don't have, I think, all 3 districts are now majority Hispanic, and there isn't a single district that's majority white in New Mexico. which is, and New Mexico is like about, I think, it is majority minority, but at the same time, it's not like 0% of New Mexicans are white and they get no congressional representation at all. So, needless to say, yeah, New Mexico's current map is not at all fair. It's a reverse racial gerrymander, and it should be overruled as unconstitutional. It's sort of like that other Supreme Court case, which with regards to North Carolina. I kind of forgot what it was. What it was called. Hang on, let me see right here. The case. Yeah, I forgot what it was called, but I think it was a congressional map. It was a redistricting thing, which with regards to North Carolina, where it created a map that sort of looked kind of bonkers, but it gave Democrats, or it gave Black voters and Democrats like a lot of extra congressional maps because of a attempt to give Black voters more representation. But at the same time, it did also sort of discriminate against white voters in the state. So, needless to say, this New Mexico map does the same thing. I think it should be struck down as unconstitutional, but given how slow the New Mexico judiciary is and the fact that it'll take years for an appeal to the Supreme Court, I just think it won't be overruled anytime soon. So this new map which I made for New Mexico, it has one Republican district, one Dem district, and two Dem districts. It's not competitive, like there aren't any competitive districts. And yes, all three districts are still majority minority, but at least in this case it does give white voters a little bit more representation than normally speaking. And it's 100% proportional and 100% towards minority representation. So needless to say, this is a good map for New Mexico. So yeah, I think they should get at least one Republican district for New Mexico. And another state which is gerrymandered, this is the final state, is the state of Massachusetts. I just don't buy at all that Democrats have control of all 9 districts. All 9 districts are solidly Republican, despite the fact that, generally speaking, Democrats win the state like 70-30 or 60-40. So Republicans should control at least 1 or 2 districts, but Dems control all 9. I just don't buy that. So this map which I created for Massachusetts has one red district right here. I think that's the second district. I think that's Jim McGovern's district. I basically made that into a red district now, and it contains some of the suburban parts of Springfield as well as the city of Worcester. And then I made another red district down here. I think this is the district that's currently controlled by Jake Auchincloss, I think. Auchincloss, yeah. So I made this into a slightly red district. I basically created 2 competitive districts in Massachusetts, and the rest are all solid blue. So I think this is overall better than its current map when it comes to overall how proportional it is. It's still not the best map, generally speaking, when it comes down to it, but if you compare it to Massachusetts' current map, not that one. Hang on a second. Yeah, Massachusetts 2022 congressional. Let's see here. Why is it comparing to that one? I don't know why. There we go. Pick. So yeah, overall it's better than Massachusetts' current congressional map, which is not at all proportional, not at all competitive. So needless to say, I like this current map which I made for Massachusetts. It's much better than the original. It's not my best fair map, to say the least, but I still like it. So anyway, those are all the congressional maps I've drawn. Thank you guys for watching this video. Make sure to like this video down below and subscribe to the channel.